Right. So this is our very last session of the what we're calling the AEC experience. You know? And so we've got a special treat for you today, a little bit different, a little bit more casual, a little bit more interactive, conversational than past. So we're not going to download you with a whole bunch of additional information, but we will. I think we'll get you to think a little bit. So again, learning about the different projects. Want to connect with it. All you have to do is Google AEC experience, design and construction, or go on the Bowls Connect. Experience that. All right. And then the 360-degree walks, basically those are updated on a weekly basis. Walk through the construction site. What's cool now is that they're so far along in construction, you can actually go back week by week by week by week by week and watch it as it goes backwards in construction, but actually see how things are getting constructed. It's actually pretty cool. So what we are talking about today is the alternate career paths. I keep moving Mark around here. Alternate career paths. So I think the latest figures that I've seen is that most people today I probably need to share the screens. You're right. Thank you. There we go. So yes, thank you. Thank you again, Arturo. So most people go through their lifetime these days, which is probably kind of daunting. So you to embark on your first career, but it really leads to the fact that I can say yes, 2 decades, millennial. You grow up and they're not the same thing that father did. Agrarian society or industrial society, very much a changing society as it goes through. And you get to a point in your lives where you kind of say, okay, what do I do next? Does God want to lead me? Do I want to be? What do I want to be when I grow up? I'm that out someplace. Somebody wise just said, take your time. With that being said, we've got an interesting panel here today. So we have, and I tried to pick people who you all can relate to. So myself, you can relate to me after the whole semester now. But I am an architect. I have a business degree, but I don't really architecture in that strict sense anymore. I really don't do business in that strict sense anymore, but I'm serving as the owner that side. So a bit about that. Chris Clater over here, you all probably familiar. He is the project manager for the Honors College building. Got a lot of people from back, a couple from USF. But Chris originally started off as a civil engineer
by education.
Civil engineer by education, now is in the construction business, now is in the people business.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. He also is a leader in the whole industry as Beck kind of looks to their integrated project. Integrated project leader across their whole company nationwide. We've also got Mark Mendelson. Phone is I've worked with for years and years and years now as we've been getting the Honors College. He is their pre-construction which means he's an estimator. He's somebody that deals with how do you actually get the building built? What does it really cost? But interestingly enough, he started out his career in sciences.
A lot of people skills. A lot of people skills too.
Which is very unusual for computer people.
Yeah.
So, no. But again, it's all interesting. We'll kind of talk about that. So we have Caroline, and I'm not going to try and butcher your last name.
Ostrich, like ostrich.
Ostrich.
Yep.
Ostrich. Okay. Yeah, you'd never get that. Ostrich. All right. She actually started out in marketing. So I know we've got a marketing major in here. But she's in the marketing of construction architecture. We also have Trevor Lamphere, who is another architect. You met Brian Wilson, an architect in construction business. Trevor is an architect, and interestingly enough, I didn't realize it until I was today, but we studied the High Line in this class, and I know you just got back from visiting the High Line last week. Trevor was actually the project manager on the architecture side for the last phase of the High Line. Interesting in that aspect. A big deal.
Depends on what matters to you.
And then we also have Harry Patel on the phone here. Harry came to any of the tours previously. Harry is actually the assistant director of energy management, and I may have his title incorrectly here, Harry, but he is assistant director, manages all of our utilities for the university. He's also become very good at explaining engineering and every aspect. So our vice president has asked him to kind of take a budgetary aspect and help communicate our budget needs from a facilities management standpoint, that to what I affectionately call our AAA, which accountants, attorneys, and auditors, who governed my life. Again, let me start from the bottom and start with Harry. So, not going in any particular realm, but Harry, why don't you take the field and here we go.
So let me, since I'd like this interactive kind of session, and if I knew you guys were there, I would have actually been there in person. But just let's start. Can you guys hear me properly? All
That's a
right.
yes.
So let me ask a question to all of you guys: is that what do you expect when you graduate? What do you want to take with you from the university? What do you think you will take from the university? From all this education and all these classes, what do you think you will retain, take with you for the rest of your life?
You hope to take with you. All right, this class is normally a lot more verbal than maybe just
People
because
are
it's
in
flat.
person.
Yeah,
So
flat, Harry.
I'll just speak to my experience. First thing that I took from colleges is a lifelong friends. You make some friendships that will last lifelong. Take that in mind and just look at the friends that you have. They will be lifelong friends. The other thing that I took from I did the engineering, so I don't remember all these engineering things. Fundamentals, basics are good and everything. You have books and everything, but the biggest thing that I learned from the college was actually art of learning and problem solving, and that has helped me throughout my career. How to approach a problem, may it be engineering or anything, it's just a simple logics that I still apply today is what is a problem? Why does a problem exist? And what do you need to solve it? And you need some sort of a measurement tool to measure the success of the solution or not. And that applies to business, engineering, and everything you do in life. So those are the few things that I've learned that from the college that has served me well over the time. And what do I do that I learned in college today? Almost nothing and almost everything. Because
And everything.
yeah, but all the engineering that I did learn, it's the basics are still useful every day today. Like anytime there is a design we are discussing or any kind of control. So I'll give you the example. My path was did the engineering, then did 10.5 years of application engineering, did the controls programming, then became project manager, then became energy manager, then became assistant director with the energy, the fire safety and key shop even. I mean, who would have thought that I would be overseeing key shop? Not same thing. I manage budgets. I manage the budgets of over $22 million every year. I used to at least now until last week. Um, so it's just what my take has always been is the curiosity to learn, and that has served me well, and all of the problem solving skills. And the other biggest thing that I've learned over the time, as in being an engineer, you always want to do everything by yourself because you trust yourself and your mathematics and your skills. Some of you are probably like that too, but remember, it's always a teamwork. It's never I work. It's always a team that makes it happen. And find the partners that you can pick from, find the strengths in them, make a good team, and you deliver a good product. May it be presentation, may it be assignment, may it be a project. So those are the things that I can say that you should develop those kind of people skills, and that will serve you much better. Um, Alternate paths. I mean, just in engineering, from I know, mechanical engineering is all of the fields are so vast. I can just speak for the mechanical engineering. Um, you can actually build a wheelchair as a mechanical engineer. You can build a car. You can build a fighter jet. You can build a ship. You can do HVAC engineering. You can build rocket ships. I mean, there's so much vast diaspora, and there's always going to be gray areas. Like all of these systems, you need to program. You need to write codes for it. So now you're getting into the computer science, electronics. Uh, you need motors to make everything. So now you're getting into electrical. Well, you need to work with the architectural engineering side to make it fit in a place and find the right fitment and everything. So I mean, you will never know what direction you're going to take. And there is sales engineering because you got to sell all of these things too to somebody. Uh, then someday you're just going to become a president of the company. So now you got to manage the people and the product and all the vision and everything. So don't limit yourself. That's the thing. Is limit. Somebody said it nice. Is like that your limit is what you set. So if you limit yourself to do only one task, well, that's your limit. If, if you expand your horizons, then you can do a lot more different things. And I still learn. Every day is a learning experience, and it's just great. So, any questions from what I just said? I can keep on talking about these things all the time. So, I guess this
Are
group is
mechanical,
quiet.
you always have questions. No? Let me down.
But ask
Right.
questions because that's the thing. Ask questions if you don't know the answer.
Even if you do.
But not during the exams, by the way.
Thank you, Harry. Let's jump back up to Trevor.
Sure. So Steve mentioned, my background is as an architect. So I went to undergrad for architecture. I actually had Bob McLeod as a professor, who's the dean of the architecture school here at Florida. Awesome. You guys are fortunate to have him here on campus. And actually, there are other professors that brought with him that are also amazing. But I then moved up to New York, went to grad school, which is not always a requirement to become an architect, but depending on which architecture school you go, you either go to a B.Arch or a B.Des, basically a useless undergrad degree, and then you have to get a master's degree on top of it in order to get professionally licensed. And so after graduating from grad school, I stayed in New York and went to work for a firm there, Diller Scofidio Renfro. So the reason that I really wanted to go to work there is that they've got kind of a dual practice role where they have art projects, they'll do installations. And so one of their really famous projects is this project they did in 2000 for a World Expo, where they built a little building in the middle of a lake that has like thousands of water nozzles on it. And when they're all on, so it's like pumping water up from the lake. And when all the water nozzles are on, it looks like a cloud. Yeah, it's amazing. I'll send you a video. So I really wanted to go do non-traditional architecture, kind of like, yeah, countercultural architecture, if you will. And so, that was kind of where my heart was set. And so I joined their practice and did that for a little while, and pretty quickly realized that unless I want to keep, how much do I love this particular vein of what they do? Because if I continue along right now in this path, it really narrows my future career opportunities, because there's not a lot of places you can go work afterward that build clouds. And so, after working on some other installations and, really fun projects, I kind of drifted over back to, more capital A traditional architecture projects. And so I worked on some houses, some museums, and some other things kind of briefly, and then started working on the High Line, which the very last phase. So if you go to New York, the part that's over by Hudson Yards, so it's the northern end, the very northeast end is the part that I worked on over 10th Ave and 30th Street. And I worked on that for almost 5 years.
Just that one portion?
Just that one portion. So it's like 20,000 square feet. So I have an intimate, that's my first child. And it was, so the benefit of that is that I was able to see the whole spectrum, right? So, from those first sketches of a project to shop drawings and, having heated discussions with contractors about what should be done on site. And the thing that, in order to get licensed, you graduate with a master's of architecture degree, and then you've got to work for a certain amount of years. And it's about 3 years, but the requirements that you get kind of a range of different exposures to different things. So a little bit of business development, contracts, concept design, and then construction administration, which is basically like the architect's role during construction. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep the contractor aligned with the design intent of the project, which is something that, coming from I want to be a countercultural architect, that, not a capital A architect, I never thought I'd want to work in that construction administration position. But once I got there, really loved it. Loved the coordination with the contractor. We developed a really great relationship. And he had been an architect and had, kind of shifted careers over into construction, and really kind of opened my eyes about the value that he brought in terms of his ability to kind of predict what I was going to want on site. You know, there was a lot of, we kind of jumped a couple levels immediately in our relationship. We became very, very good friends, but the ability of his to kind of translate through was really incredible. And so when we had a child and kind of thought about, I was kind of reaching a point where I was like, all right, what else? And at the same time, we were looking at leaving New York. And so I kind of combined all those things. And, you know, from afar, I was like, oh, the Beck Group looks really cool, right? Because their design build, and I had grown really frustrated with, as an architect, when you're drawing things, you're doing tons of guesses and assumptions, right? So you're assuming this is the most efficient way to build this. I'm going to use, you just have to make decisions, right? So you're like, wood or steel? Steel, you know, like glass or plastic, glass, you know, you make decisions, and you don't always know, those decisions aren't always based in facts. Yeah, they could be hunches, right? It's like, I think this is cheaper. I think this is easier to build, right? Because you don't have all of the, you don't have access to all the information. And so I really wanted to, you know, basically sit next to like Mark and Caroline and Chris and, you know, suck all their information out. And there's an idea in architecture about a master builder. And if you go back, there's a moment where construction manager and architect were one person. And the design took a lot longer and the construction took a lot longer because you've got this one person that's kind of, you know, he's the glue. And so I guess my aspiration in branching into different non-traditional orders is to be more gluey.
Louis?
Our new profession. In fact,
Okay.
creating a
Epoxy.
job title just for
Yeah.
I'm going to use that term now at work.
Harry made up some words, so.
Bonus points for creativity.
We have that.
Do you all have any questions? I can keep talking longer though.
Term counterculture.
So there's like any other discipline, there's like a bunch of different subcurrents in architecture. So there's there's like aesthetics, right? There are like aesthetic styles that people follow, but then there are also there's, you know, good citizen architecture, right? Which is like either about sustainability or kind of cultural socio-cultural contributions. But I kind of, the genre of architecture that was being taught at Columbia when I was there was really about challenging the why of your project, because you typically, like, architects are so focused on the what, right? Like, what is it? And Columbia really challenged us to think about, why are you doing what you're doing? What's the point? Right? Like, sure, you could build a beautiful museum there, but what's the point? And so that was kind of, that's my favorite question. I like asking one.
Why is that?
I don't know, it's just, you know, that it's like you want to get at the big picture, right? You want to see the forest that you're living in.
That's why it gets down to the root of everything that you're doing. So you start asking, well, I don't understand how to restructure whatever you're in to make it that much better.
I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is like a bad, on my part, resistance to being put in a box.
Mhm.
And so immediately asking, what's the point of the box, so that I can understand a good reason to not be in the box.
I was just giving you an altruistic.
The conversation, I'm like. Right. Hamilton and we talk about, they're like fighting over it. It's hilarious in the beginning.
So tell us about your world. You started out as a marketing major.
Marketing business, yeah. Well, I interned at an engineering firm. That's how I originally got into the business. But similar to Trevor, actually Clear and I went to school together.
We did.
Clear's a twin. And
Two of you
there's
remember.
another one walking around somewhere.
Good.
Yeah, so I, Trevor, and I majored in marketing. I interned in college. I don't know if you guys are, I would really just better, but doing a variety of things. I did stand-up plastic surgery. I did that for like a engineering firm. But then when I went out to go get a job, I had all these different skill sets on there, and if someone really liked, like, wanted to hire me, they could, oh, well, she has experience. You know, make a connection, but started out marketing, and then as soon as I got the job back, a couple years later, the recession hit, and back at the time was 135 people. Down.
It was in the Tampa office.
Yeah, in the Tampa office, yeah, and spent a lot of time on the phone trying to find people jobs after they got laid off. So I got really good at networking, hustling, and problem solving with like duct tape and like it out. And so we did it. We just made it work. And I think that's the benefit of working at factory or working the thing outside the box, much like what Trevor was saying. I think when you work like that, it's never boring. It's like they're never satisfied with what I'm just like, can we I'm like, well, maybe better. Just like constantly, and it's good. It really, I shouldn't cheat, but it's good. But if you're working with people that are always like thinking outside the box and pushing you and challenging you, then they're boring. Or I don't find it to be boring. And then you're always challenging yourself because you get to a certain point in your but you know, where you're like, you know, what that challenge still, and at some point, it's definitely a lot easier to have those conversations with yourself midway in your career versus the. But anyway, so I got to do that, and then as time went on, I started making relationships, and as my friends started to get into positions, they were in decision-making positions, or it was a natural move development. Back is a little different, and most of the bigger GCs and design firms in town, usually you're in sales. It's not really sales, it's more like strategic planning or like out, you know, thinking far out, like what's the next industry that we need to get into. I don't get like a mission off of selling a building or closing a sale. I get, you know, I have my goal. The different, I feel like sales people automatically think that they're just trying to close sales. Like, it's not really like that. I'm trying to grow our business and also find work that's really for our people. And so like we may have a project, we get projects all the time. Oh, it's yours, you guys can have it. The client, I mean, they're you know, they don't, their contracts and our people don't have people that want to stay and do the work. I mean, then things. So those are the things, the conversations that we have a lot, and I really like that back the culture to talk. So I think if you can work at if you can have a career or some sort of, if it's not a job that maybe you wanted, but the culture, I think that's always a good start, at least what's possible. That's another benefit I think at working at Beck is that we have folks, for example, like if design doesn't have a lot of work, like we have design and construction, so we'll have like a lot of design and then not a lot of construction, so it's not always perfect. So we have folks that can hop back and forth. So because of that, it's never boring. Skills that Trevor could do design, like he helps me on pursuits all the time. So Chris, and they come to the table with different ideas, and everyone's got some sort of connection, and making sure that I'm realizing that and leveraging it as best we can. I say mostly when I talk to people about my job, is getting everyone to paddle at the same time. If you guys ever done like dragon boat racing or paddling or whatever, like everyone's paddling, but if everyone's paddling at different times, different. But my job is to get everybody to paddle at the same time and like say the same things and the ship forward, so that way we're making progress, otherwise everyone's just going like a million different directions and our progress on our goal. A lot of things, especially now, it's growing a lot, it's very, very distracting to chase that maybe isn't fit for us. But I mean, sometimes you don't have the luxury, sometimes you gotta kiss some frogs. They can't all be USF, Steve. They're not all princess. But Mark, I work with Mark a lot too. Mark's like, same with Lou. And Mark does a lot, to help the sales process. And Trevor was saying, when we're designing something, necessarily think of cost implications, and so a client get really excited about it, but we're like, oh, you like that? Like that's not a fun sales pitch, so it's good, I think, to have guys and help. But yeah, so I mean, I managed accounting at one point, I've had a lot of jobs, but I think that's, like I said, the good thing about that is I hire folks with soft skills. Obviously you have to have technical skill also, but the soft skills are really, so you guys are learning a lot of soft skills. But that probably is. You guys talk a lot about soft skills. You guys know what that means? So like, you guys have arts in school. Good. Can I curse? You're like an a-hole, no one. Have all the technical skills, they don't. So the soft skills are critically. Want to work with you, they'll help you fill in those gaps at the time. So I would say definitely focus a lot on time and help me in my career.
What it's worth, it's soft skills that helps you build relationships. There are people who do that and it's fine, but they don't get, I've yet to see one fulfillment from profession.
Spend more time with people.
You got more than kids.
You want to be with people that not let them walk away.
We're gonna jump over to Mark. You've been awful quiet up here.
I know. Well, the sound keeps going in and out a little bit on your end. I don't know, Hari, if you're hearing that on your end. All right, so where do I start?
Yep, I'm hearing the sound breaking up a lot on my end.
Okay, good. I thought it was just mine. All right, where do I start? God, I remember, being dropped off by my parents, taking that drive from Atlanta. What's that?
Nothing.
So you're starting in computer science.
Yeah.
Dropped off by your parents.
No, hold that thought. So literally, I remember.
Dad, what?
Can you guys hear me? All right.
Yeah, we got it.
All right, Clater, don't let Lafferty do that. He's messing with me. No, what I was saying is I remember taking the drive from Atlanta to Tallahassee, being dropped off by my parents, and you're just thrown into college and you got to figure out what to do. Like, I literally remember that like it was yesterday. So yes, you got to pick a career path. I chose computer science. Actually, I'm sorry, I chose civil engineering. I did that for a little while. I did that for a full year, my freshman year, and it just didn't feel right. It did not click. And I believed in myself, and I was like, I'm going to be patient. So I switched over to computer science and graduated with that degree, and then still didn't feel right after graduating. So what I did is I moved to Colorado. I was a ski bum, fly fishing bum for a little while, trying to find myself. I actually took the LSATs. I thought about being a lawyer. Can you guys believe that? Caroline, can you imagine me being a lawyer? No. No, not at all. And
There's all kinds of different lawyers.
yeah, exactly. So I always enjoyed construction. I was really into woodworking. So I moved back to Atlanta and I got my master's in building construction. So I went into a course there up at Kennesaw State, and I took one estimating course and it instantly clicked. The light bulb just went off for me. And again, going back to believing yourself, you just know when it's right. I picked up on the fact that nobody else wanted to do the numbers to figure out how much these buildings cost. And no one really wanted to interact with the architects. Again, back to what Trevor was saying, it's like you're by yourself designing a silo. Like it's broken. Our industry is broken. So I saw the opportunity there and fell in love with it. And then did my first project up in Atlanta. It was like a $200 million church. And there's nothing better than that feeling of opening up that project at the end, like 2 years downstream, and watching the reactions when people walk into those spaces. And it just feels good. It feels right. And then that was my second light bulb. I was like, I absolutely love this. I love being on the front end of the design. So I carried that all the way through. I moved from Atlanta to Tampa. I married my college sweetheart down here in Tampa. She hated Georgia, so I'm stuck in Tampa. So I started working with an airport builder. So did a lot of big airports, and then found my home at Beck, and it just made sense with being front end on the design. We did the Dali Museum. Again, that was just an amazing experience working with the architect. There's a lot of turmoil when on the front end design, back to costing everything. So sometimes I feel like I'm a captain on a ship by myself with all these rough seas and waters, and I'm just grabbing people. I'm like, get on the boat. We're going to figure this out together. And sure enough, we get to the sunny waters, the clear waters. And that's exactly what's happening on the Honors College. Steve, I think you said we worked on that job for 5 years before it ever started. It takes a long time to get that job exactly the price we want, the program that we want, and then the building that we want that you guys all experience and will experience when you walk into those spaces. So that's a quick synopsis of the past 20 years, but just be patient and it will come to you. I mean, that couldn't be any more alternate than anything. I went from lawyer to civil engineer all over the place. That's kind of my story.
I'd like to add something to what Mark said, actually, if I may.
Only if you
Please.
turn your camera on.
Oh, I'm actually on job site right now too. I needed to get out. No, Mark actually brought up a very good, interesting story. Similarly, like I actually grew up in India, and we have a merit-based system. So one board system in the state, whatever grades you get, based on that, you get to whatever is available field you get. It's not like you get to go pick and choose your schools and everything. So became a mechanical engineer, came here. It's been just a roller coaster. Just give yourself time, be patient, learn from everybody as much as you can, and you'll just succeed. So just wanted to convey that.
Yeah, exactly. Surround yourself around smart people and you'll be smarter. Unfortunately, I have to work with Chris Clater every day, so I feel dumber.
Feel for the guy.
You think it's your turn?
There you go. All right, why not? Yeah, my experience has been equally as chaotic as everybody else. So undergrad at UF, but my major changed 5 times, 5 years. I say actually 4.5 years, because I went in physical therapy. Then after 1 semester, decided that was definitely not the path. Then I claimed undecided for a semester, since they actually let me get away with that. And then I was shocked. Finally got the call from the advisor. Pick something. And then I changed to business, and I was like, I do not have the patience for this. And then I was like, well, I like math, so I'll be a math major. And then after a semester of that, it dawned on me that what am I going to do with a math degree? So one of my friends had made a comment. She said, be a good civil engineer. And my response was, the heck's a civil engineer? So she explained it to me, like, sounds like a challenge, so why not? I'll do that. And went and signed up as a civil engineer, went into that school, and much like Mark, it just clicked. I love engineering. I love the problem solving aspect of my engineering course. So I went through engineering, and then my I think I moved into engineering the first semester of my junior year. So I basically had 4 years worth of. I've done 2.5. But I think my second to last semester, I took a construction management course. This too. So then I had this, I love engineering, I love construction, I want to figure out what to do. And then about 3 months after I graduated with civil engineering degree with a focus on structural systems, I moved up to New York City. No rhyme or reason why, just felt like moving up to New York City. No job, no money, sold my truck, and I'll find a job. So, Steve was mentioning earlier, I guess there's a metric out there that says career paths change 3 to 4 times. Mine's changed 4 to 5 at this point. But it keeps balancing, to be honest with you. So as an aside to that, I'm happy to hear that metric because in addition to it meaning that we're seeing this shift in how society chooses what we want to do, it's also the fact that career paths are changing, I see as a really good indication that we're starting to see how these individual career opportunities intermingle with each other. The fact that you can jump from this to this to that means that you have exposure to all of that, or at least the opportunity to jump to that. I take it as a really good indication because I think the more society develops into what it is we're in terms of the workforce, the more we're going to have to be flexible in what those career paths look like. Things look like. But I digress. So when I moved up, I ended up getting a job doing beach restoration out on Long Island in the middle of the winter. And if anybody has never been on a dredge, on a 300-foot boat, in the middle of winter in the Northeast, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It was to the point, I think the coldest I ever felt was the wind chill was 18 below, and the waves were ice before they hit the deck of the ship. So I did that for 6 months and decided this is miserable. So I did beach restoration. It's one career.
It warms up after 6 months.
Yeah, that's when we have to be done. So they only work on the beaches in the winter. They beach on the beach in the summer. But it was intriguing, and you'll see how this leads into where I'm at now. It's the world has a strange way about it. That's what I'll say. So I moved back I was commuting back and forth between New York City and the Hamptons. And so I decided to find a job with a construction management firm. I'll actually do construction. So I did a handful of projects with 2 different companies in New York City, mostly in Brooklyn and downtown Manhattan. So all historical rehab, literally 120-year-old buildings, stuff that was finished in the late 1800s, we go through and rehab. So really cool work, tons of great exposure. But I got tired of New York City. So born and raised in Tampa, wanted to come back. For what it's worth, I grew up on the USF campus, so lots of fun. And when I moved back, I decided I wanted to actually get my commercial engineering license. So I hired on with I was looking for a job, and I applied to a marine structures engineering firm local here. And oddly enough, they saw that I had beach restoration work on there, so it definitely led into that opportunity. So I did marine structures and soil structure interaction design and analysis for about 7 years. That's where I met Beck Group. So on all of my projects at Port Tampa, I would hire Beck Architecture to provide architecture services. Where I met our now operations manager, Brian Wilson. He was principal architect at the time. So he and I did a handful of jobs together, and he starts pitching this Beck integration thing. I say, yeah, whatever. So at this point, my career's changed, we'll say 3 times. And then the more I got around Beck, the more I saw what we were doing in terms of blending those lines between disciplines, between professions, right? All of a sudden, there was no designer and builder. There was just, let's go and do this thing. Take the project start to finish. And even when there was a separation of entities, there was 2 different companies. Brian and I always acted as a single entity. That's how we approached everything. So about 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago now, I became a Beck employee. So that was my fourth career change. And now I really straddle the line between design, construction, and then operations. So Steve was mentioning, I moved to the people business, and that's a lot of what I do now as an integrated project leader, as a project executive, even the project manager on the honors college. I've yet to, in 2 years on that, we've been out there, I've yet to pick up a hammer. I don't build anything, I leave. The hammers, the hammers, that's how we measure things. So it's, the journey's been long and convoluted for me, but to Mark's point, to Harry's point, stay the course. There's always opportunities. Don't ever think you're stuck in any one profession. I guarantee you there's opportunities out there. And if you reach a point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, go find something else. Like we were saying before, spend too much time, too much of your energy in your life in what you do as a profession to not get fulfillment out of it. And really, I love the people that I work with just as much as I love my, why I come to work, do what we do every single day. So I encourage everybody in this room to strive for that. At the end of the day, want to be fulfilled. And it's up to you guys to make sure that you're putting yourselves in positions to visit you. All I got.
I heard some threads in almost all your conversations that each one of you kind of got to a point in your life where you had to say, what is the next step? Where do I want to go next? What are the questions that you asked yourself at that time in your
Well, I can go first on that one. I was just talking with my friend civil engineer Rich Piccinini that it was actually about 5 years ago. Me and my friend, we were chatting, and I had been an application engineer for 10 years, and at that time we were discussing that do I really want to keep on doing the same thing for the rest of my life, or what do I want to do? Because at some point I will be tired of doing this thing, or I will not be able to keep up with the technology, or something else will change. What is the next step? So at that time I was thinking more like maybe some sort of management. Let's change the career, but in the same field, but let's do something different now that I have enough experience in the field. So next position that I got was an opportunity I got was a facilities project manager. I didn't even think that I would become a project manager and do some construction and everything, but turns out that I was fairly successful because I had great support from the people I worked with. So, and same thing after project manager. What is the next? I would like to do something different. Same thing. I became assistant director right now. And again, I'm asking myself the same question. Do I want to still do the same thing currently, or where do I want to go? I would like to do something different at much bigger level. So let's just keep on growing, keep on learning, because almost nobody does the same thing for their whole life. So it's just learning opportunity, learning and growing. Simple as that. That's just for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it falls more down to, are you willing to expand and challenge yourself? Right? Because you don't know if the next thing you're going to get into is that thing for you until you start doing it. You can educate yourself. You can have a general idea. For me, I know I love two things. I love blowing up boxes and causing chaos, and I love people. That's why I like being an integrated project leader, because I get to lead teams and challenge them to think outside the box and frankly blow the box up, set it on fire, forget that the box ever existed. What does that process look like? And then I like understanding what makes people tick. I do. It's how I love motivating people and putting them in positions to succeed and feel fulfilled in their profession. So I love doing our personality profiles for a given team and understanding who has what intricacies and what their goals are and how they interact. I know that if I see a personality profile that at Beck we run multiple, but one of them gives us 3 different personality profiles. how they see themselves, how they think other people should see them, and then their oh crap phase, right? So I know that
Real
if,
self.
Yeah.
I know that if somebody thinks that, like, I can tell you mine. My personality profile says that I am, at my core, I am this hyper detailed person over here. But it also says that I think people should see me as not this hyper detailed person. So that inherently is gonna have conflict for me every single day. Like I come into work and I immediately have stress because I already have this need to be something that I'm not inherently. I wake up in the morning. So everybody has these types of things about themselves. So understanding what those things are allows me to lead them in the right direction and make sure that they come into work every single day without that stress, right? So it is similar to what Harry was saying, just keep pushing yourselves. And I think it's less about what did I ask myself and more about, am I willing to take a chance and get a little crazy with opportunity? Maybe it's the one.
Personality testing. It helps to understand each other very quickly. For starting out in the team, but I think there's taking strength finders. That's a good one. Yeah, it's really. Any of those.
Class, but Strength Finders is a great one. This profile is a
Yeah,
is a great
those are
one.
all really good. I recommend taking. It's about. It teaches you a lot about yourself.
Exactly. A lot of it is self-awareness
Yeah, that's not hard.
as opposed to
Yeah, strength finders is good just because it's and it's one that you can take a test and you don't actions that you're in, but it's one that's like, don't worry about the things that you're not good at because you're never going to be good at those things and you're probably not going to enjoy spending time. Like, focus on the things that you're trying to weave in job or not an extrovert, you probably
others can do it. Yeah, but after they do it, they've got to.
Yeah.
They've got to re-energize. So when you got to the point where you were asking yourself those questions, what influences you one direction or the other?
Like like Mark was saying, surround yourself with the right. I promise you, if you surround yourself with the right people, those paths will become. Well, because we can define the right people. The right people, they supplement your natural talents. If you surround yourself with people that are exactly like you, then that's not supplementation, that's reiteration. Right? So when what's that?
Redundancy.
It is. So I can tell you, like in our regional leadership here, we have 5 regional leaders, right? There's not a single one that has the exact same personality profile, a single one that is good at the exact same thing. Our region has done a job of surrounding themselves with that enhance what they're naturally supplement with. You get that level of perspective, different paths, that's when things start to make sense. That's when the path starts to be.
Big time. It takes a while to learn your weaknesses, though. To find those people that can fill those gaps. You just got to be, comfortable with yourself and vulnerable. But that takes time. But when you do that, you build great teams.
Be able to accept your weakness, what they are. Along with, this is who I am.
We're getting into a whole bunch of emotional intelligence stuff
We
that
got-
Caroline was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, that's the soft skills, but like when we're interviewing people, technical skills are like. But on the list is culture fit, do they have the soft skills, do they have the self-awareness, like, those are things that are much more difficult. Take a long And also shows level of maturity too.
Can teach technical skills. Teaching emotional intelligence.
That is like whatever profession you choose to be in,
Correct, yeah,
start your brain over again.
yeah.
Like when you started here at USF, you know, you had a brain and then they broke it and then they built a new brain.
Yeah.
And then when you graduate, you'll go get a job and they'll break your brain and then you'll build a new brain again. And it's great. Because then you still have the old brain, you know, it's just kind of in pieces and it gets reassembled with that. But every place you end up working, you know, is a little bit of a reset to the way that you think. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, I think it's something to be embraced and relied upon because like that's how you kind of become this more, you know, maybe misshapen but well-rounded individual, like, you know, to have kind of a more diverse pairing of strengths. But I want to echo something that Caroline said earlier, which is about trying stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a real huge benefit to just getting kind of random internships, like that you think you might be interested in, because you will realize, you know, I want to be an architect. When I started at University of Florida, I wanted to be an architect. And then I graduated, you know, 8 years later, then I found out what being an architect was. When I joined an architecture
Yeah.
club. Because like, you join a major and you understand what that major is like, but you don't have no idea what it is to actually work as that profession, and you don't really know it unless you spend 3 to 6 months in an office seeing what those people do. And, you know, every different kind of office has a different flavor of what that's like, and that's your best window into the world of the future. You know, and that's the value of the internship is what do I not want to do?
I do want to, not to dive right off the bat. I want to make, getting a lot of EQ, what we call EQ, there's IQ and EQ. Get a lot of discussions right now on emotional intelligence, simply because the people, all of us are in leadership positions, and emotional intelligence is hypercritical. Here's the reality: if you hate people, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I know a lot of engineers, I know a lot of builders that frankly, they hate people. They hate dealing with people. They don't want to talk to people. It makes them miserable. But you know what? They are really good at what they do. Literally to this day, the best engineer that I've ever met in my life is a complete jerk if you put him in front of an owner. He is awful. And I would never in my life put this person in front of an owner, a client, even a whatever. He stays in his office and he designs, and by golly, loves it. It is what drives him every single day. So don't take anything that we're saying as you gotta go out there and figure out how to lead people. No. I like to get into the details and live in the weeds. Do that. Don't be
But if
afraid.
you're that guy that's working in the closet, not talking to anyone, but you think you're amazing at people,
Well, that's a different story.
that's a different story.
I said it a lot of times, like, you're not ever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
I think as long as you're okay with this part, I mean, that's
No, you're right.
because no one.
And he did. We
Yeah.
tried, there were times where our
That's
company
great.
tried to move him into a leadership role. He's like, no,
Good.
no, not for me. I'm just gonna upset people.
I think there's a point where that point is, okay, do I want to continue moving up this ladder? Because that's it's like the American way. I always want to move up the ladder and move up to the next rung. Like, well, better at what I'm,
Or horizontally, like.
yeah,
something
do I just want to get better at what I'm doing and do what I'm doing better, make a bigger difference at the level I'm at. Said about that.
Those conversations are a lot easier to have though when you have a lot of work experience, a lot of
Right.
opportunity. If you don't have, into opportunity, I think those conversations are harder to have with yourself.
Yeah.
And at some point, you guys will have a million jobs though. Not like us, we'll be. You got your generation's gonna be talking around, which I think is a good thing, and you guys are definitely gonna challenge the structure of the American.
I agree.
What are bouncing around in your head? At least one. Yeah, it usually starts the.
Good. So my question is kind of a general leadership question, because you guys talked. So you mentioned that you need to surround yourself with the right people. You should build your. What if you already have a team that you're stuck with? And some people just, you know that they're not, you know that they're capable of good, but they're just not good. Like get it out of them in the respect.
Open, respectful communication, that's all it is. 99.9% of the time, I've been in that position more than I care to admit. We don't very few times do we actually get to pick who we surround ourselves. Especially on, like, I can speak if they're designing construction. I'm not, Caroline, Mark, they're part of our regional leader. I'm not. I don't get to say, this is who I'm going to surround myself with. I get a project team, right? And sometimes we're even limited just due to what the circumstances are, how many projects are there. So more times than not, there are team members who, would they be my first choice? Probably not. But it doesn't matter, right? That's who I have. So what I've found in the past, when people are struggling to get the best out of somebody, a couple things are happening. One, that person is probably struggling with something. And a lot of times that's a hard thing to see because we get so wrapped up in frustration or anger or whatever else, because why the hell isn't this person giving me their best? We're paying them, whatever that might be, right? But that's a person. Odds are that person is struggling because of something, right? And that's where leaders almost have to play therapist and sit that person down and say, what's going on with you? I see in you a capability to do X, Y, Z, but you're only doing X. So why? What's going on? And a lot of times it even starts with you being vulnerable. Right? Leadership to me is all about vulnerability. My teams know way too much about me because I want to throw it out there. I want them to see everything there is about me and for me to be an open book because that's what I want from them in return. So when you can open up those lines of communication, ask that person to let their guard down just a little bit, you start to get to the root of why they may not be performing. Now, here's the challenge. Maybe they are performing. Maybe your expectation of what they're capable of doing is a little off, right? So I know this is a really convoluted answer, but the reality is there's no straight solution to it. You just have to get to the root cause of it. Sometimes it's just a realignment on expectations. Sometimes it's limiting factors on that person. Maybe that person has a sick parent, or maybe that person has some outside factors that we need to be aware of, right? I think a lot of times we lose sight of the fact that we're all just human. We all have struggles. We all have things that we're trying to navigate both inside and outside of work. So we need to be
to piggyback just a little bit, because I think the other part of that is like understanding what motivates people. Really dumb, but like, what's your why? What motivates you to wake up and come to work and do what you do? Like, what part of it is enjoyable to you? And like, everybody's got kind of a different thing that motivates them, and like understanding, oh, this is your agency, you know, like this is what this person loves to do and enjoys doing, and how do you tap into that and, you know, kind of align yourself to that person in terms of getting on the same page in terms of.
Yeah, I agree.
I think what I heard from you guys with leader, you're talking about leader of a group, but yeah, it's a lot of times you're that team member
Flat
who's
hierarchy.
working side by
Yeah.
side. It's not a hierarchical.
I'll be honest,
relationship.
to me, it doesn't
It's a-
matter.
Yeah.
To
It's
me,
a horizontal, it's an individual to individual relationship.
And I know this can be challenging, especially when you are working with somebody that is your peer, and even worse, when you're struggling with somebody who is your superior, right? From a hierarchical standpoint. I've had these conversations with people that are reporting. I've had these conversations with people that are my peers. It is, again, I want to work in a company, in a place that fosters and allows that type of conversation. If there's a problem, let's go talk about it. Let's make sure, like, it takes a lot of relationship building. But at the end of the day, even if you have a project here, it's one of your courses, and one of your team members as part of this project isn't pulling their weight, maybe there's a reason. And it's going to take a somewhat challenging, difficult conversation to figure out what that is, but it's what's needed if you want to fix it. The alternative is you don't fix it, you stay bitter, you stay angry at each other, which sounds like an awful solution.
It's it, Chris. It's those uncomfortable conversations. They're good. You have to have them. But it's amazing what happens. Just simple communication, just a simple breakfast just goes a long way. Just in that 1 hour breakfast.
I
I've practiced too with that
Wait.
don't think like me. So like I call her and practice having those conversations with someone polar opposite of me. So I have a couple friends that like we don't always agree, but I can call them and be like, hey, I'm having a problem with so can I practice what I would say? And hear their reaction, and then it takes out some of the unknown. But that I definitely I have a ton of friends that are, like I said, we don't always agree. We just probably more often agree. The people that I lean on, the advice from, I practice having those really start having them better get at it. Because start having awkward conversations. It's just it's awesome. But you gotta practice doing it. It's hard. You have to advocate for yourself.
It's healthy.
It's extremely healthy. It's cathartic. And for me, it's cathartic. It's so Ryan Toth is our regional director, and I think every year for the past at least 4 or 5 years, he's put on my review, "You are too comfortable with uncomfortable."
That is the truth. Yeah.
So I just believe in him, and I'm very fast to bring stuff to the forefront because I don't believe in letting things linger. I want to get it out on the table. I don't care how comfortable the conversation is. I don't care what position you're in. We're going to talk about it. So I refuse to come into work feel awkward every single day simply because
I'm okay with like not.
I was wondering, like, sure that you find where you're, I don't know, working with people you enjoyable in a good way, and I was wondering, like, how do you decide between if you are in a, like things that you think would like be the changing force for it versus going and finding a new place that maybe like better fits you. How do you decide between change versus going somewhere else that
Just it's easier, better fit.
Yeah.
Well, I think it
That
depends.
is really, I will, my experience, I've been in situations and had to go outside the organization to be outside of that relationship, outside of that work environment. Say, hey, there were times where I was clearly in a dysfunctional work environment and thought I was stuck. Took somebody to say, you know, that's not healthy. Get out of there. And took some tough conversations. It took getting out of my comfort zone. Ultimately, it was a learning experience. It was a
Be hard in terms of you have around you. It's like you're a drop in a pond. It's impossible, but it's
That's what I was gonna say. That I think it's more defined on the culture of the overall organization. It's so situational. The situation you're talking about it. Who knows what the factors are? I've seen companies where the culture, the overarching culture that this company lives and dies by is just phenomenal. But I've had friends work in this company, but the person that they report to directly is just completely toxic. There's no way for that person to really experience the true culture of that company because they're unfortunately stuck with a very toxic leader. You know, are there ways, are there other groups within that company you can work with? Maybe that's an opportunity. At the end of the day, if you're not able to experience that if you're not able to experience that culture in the way that you need to, or two, that culture doesn't exist or that culture doesn't align with what you want for yourself, get out. Go.
Small addition there. There's also something interesting just about like different professions have different kind of working group components and dynamics. You know, like one thing that was interesting about like leaving an architecture firm, which is like it's a bunch of people in a room, you know, typically like no walls, right? Like you've got a team that you work with, but the culture of the team in that environment tends to mimic and be more similar to the culture of the macro office. One thing that's interesting about construction firms is like you go to each one of our job sites and like there's a little variation that's like that has like a little bit more yeah, there's like a little spice that's added to whatever which is kind of interesting, but
it's temporary, it's never.
it is temporary, but it, you know, it's kind of the blend of that
project.
cocktail of people that are team members there. So sometimes it's might not be the company at large, it might just be
The pod that you're.
Yeah, and if it,
vice versa,
Yeah.
like both ways, right? Like you could have a positive experience and then the macro might be not great,
right.
vice versa.
Good to have advocates then.
And again, feel free to have those uncomfortable conversations. Something's not right, go up to the person. And get in.
How do you deal with like disagreements with it?
I yell a lot. I'll scream,
That is not-
throw things, the camera's not.
But that's a function of the
Culture, the
of
team
the culture of your team, right? Like
Right.
it's just kind of like
How do
depends
you
on
deal
what the
with
personalities are like, and hopefully there's a respectful disagreement.
But there's a lot,
Yeah.
there's love there, but I mean, it's like siblings. I mean, I've
It
seen.
Depends on the people, that's the real, I mean,
Yeah.
say, it depends on who I'm having a disagreement with. There are people in our region that we can have a disagreement with, and it's very polite, it's almost like a polite little tennis match. There are people on the Honors College project where I'm out there where we will sit there and MF each other for a good hour and then finish the conversation cracking up like we were just sitting there joking.
But
we
there's
don't-
love and trust there.
That's it. We
Yeah.
don't mean any insult by it. It's just how we communicate, right? So we disagree with each other. I'm gonna express that to you, you're gonna express that to me, and at the end of the day, our goal is to get aligned on whatever that is. Or if we can't get aligned, then we need to figure out how we can resolve the issue despite that, right? So if we need to take it to a second person or third person or whatever, or we need a consensus vote with the team, come up with a solution, right? It's just like, much like the rest of this, it's situational. Love our guys.
knowing people and knowing how they process information? We have one superintendent on a particular project, which one little thing set him off, and then later, like Mount Vesuvius going. Not your particular project right now, right now, but no,
Yeah.
but yeah, and there are times in a project that just,
You need to think too,
Just-
there's different generations too, like when you guys are gonna get jobs, you're dealing with like 5 generations. I mean, that's a big sway. There's a lot, men, women, there's a lot to navigate. That takes practice to be great. And like I said, I have some friends that I will call and be like, hey, I need to practice having a conversation with, you know, and try to find somebody who's like of that generation. Or I try to like mom or call like that I know that's older to try and make sure that I'm not saying something offhand, but that just practice and relationships with people. I think when you have trust on a team, you have a little bit more leeway to make mistakes. When people aren't. Yeah, I've worked at like almost 8, right, have a relationship with guys for a long time, and so I can get away with saying a little bit more because we have that foundation there, but there might be someone new that comes in that might be offended by what I'm saying, so I need to make sure that like I follow and check in and like, there's going to take a lot of work to do that. It's like a lot of follow-up, it's a lot of like putting it out there, checking in, asking to grab coffee. That's also part of like job.
I like what Steve
Yeah.
said in terms of
A lot.
understanding how
Doing
people
the job.
receive information. So raise your hand if you've ever heard, treat other people how you want to be. Grew up with it, right? All right, treat other people how they want to be treated.
So the personality testing.
Right, well, I think time is up. Thank you all. It was an interesting conversation. Thank you guys for coming.